All right, everyone, welcome back to Check the Kick podcast, brought to you by Sherdog.com. And I have a special guest with me. I have the homie Greg back again. How's it going, bro? Happy to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
And did you enjoy the fights? They're pretty crazy, right? Just a bunch of underdogs.
I thought it was fun, really entertaining, a bunch of underdogs. That Elvis Brenner fight was incredible. A lot of surprises. I thought it was great overall. I was thoroughly entertained.
Dude, me too. Don't want to spend too much time on the Elvis Brenner Grum Kutataladze, but he's the biggest underdog on the card, and you guys need to you can find it on maybe Dana's Instagram or somewhere on social media. Hit up Twitter, Google. The gash on Brenner's head that he received from an elbow on bottom looked like to be about 5 inches long, and it looked like someone just walked up to him and hit him in the head with a hatchet. Freaking nuts. But we're gonna go ahead and start. We're gonna start the segment with Out with the Old, and gonna just start at the top. Sean Strickland knocking out TKO stoppage over Abusupiyan Magomedov, and what a hell of a performance from Sean Strickland, man. He people are calling it his best performance. I'm not going to call it that because I think his performance over Brendan Allen was better than this one just because of who Brendan Allen has become. However, Abus came in and was being shot way up the rankings. And to go from his previous opponent to Sean Strickland was, the equivalent of taking one whole flight of stairs in one step. He got shot way up, and Abus failed. What did you think about Strickland's performance, man?
I thought it was great. He came out and he was trying to get reads, I think, and let Abus kind of burn out. I mean, he threw a bunch of teep kicks, just throwing punches, and was just Strickland was just playing defense. I think earlier when we spoke, you mentioned that he was playing it safe, and he was for sure. Just try not to get hit with anything big and kind of feel him out a little bit. And it really showed. And then in the second round, not to jump ahead too far, without talking about that wrestling exchange, when he was on the ground, he looked super confident and comfortable and was not in the least bit concerned, it seemed like, and got back up. And that's when it seemed like the tables turned, and Abus was probably a little bit looked like he was out of gas a little bit there, buddy. He looks like
he's got like the gas tank of a GoPed.
I mean, it's my takeaway. I was actually surprised because we talked about this, but it's a main event, 5-round main event, and I don't know that I've ever seen someone, especially at middleweight, essentially what seemed like burn out. I don't know how much of that was psychological. I don't know how much of it was cardio. And Strickland for sure got some shots in to start the second round, but it definitely seemed like he threw everything he had at him. Didn't like what was coming back in return, and that was all she wrote. It was
weird. No, it was weird, man. Like Abus had a bit of success with the body kicks, and he was throwing the teep to the body, and I think maybe he was trying to set up the teep up top. He had some success with leg kicks. There was one that Sean Strickland kind of lifted his leg up and checked a little bit, but I don't think Sean Strickland is going to be a guy that, he seems to be a guy that's just super tough, super durable. Remove the Alex Pereira knockout. Alex Pereira is going to do that to every single person he fights. That's Alex Pereira has done that his whole entire career. But I don't know if a guy like Sean Strickland is just going to get eaten up with leg kicks like that. I don't know. You more have to hit like a perennial nerve to really damage his leg. I don't think just constant thuds. Maybe through 3 or 4 rounds, it would finally catch up. But got hit with some leg kicks. The teep kick to the body was working. There was 2 like leaping left hooks that Abus did catch him with, but to no avail. He, like you said, even the first 3 minutes of the first round, Abus was just laying out a lot of volume, body kicks, throwing shots, leg kicks, tons of stuff. But Sean Strickland, I think he might have just been doing the tape study and probably saw what kind of I saw, um, where Abus seems to maybe gas a little bit, and he definitely doesn't like to fight off the back foot. That pressure was kind of eating him alive. Where Sean Strickland eventually just waterfalled him. There was that takedown that Abus got, and Sean Strickland kind of gave his back and almost got the body triangle locked up. But Sean Strickland has really good BJJ, and he was able to reverse out of that. The second he got up, like you said, Abus kind of fixed his pants and reset, and I watched him take a deep gasp.
Right.
And dude, when he took that deep gasp, I even shot this into the Sherdog Slack chat. I was like, Abus looks a little tired here. And dude, I think that was it for him. He was tired of shit. Um, and then Sean Strickland just got on the front foot and just put a jab on him. And then after the jab landed, even the end of the first round, Sean, you could see you could see everything start to shift in Sean Strickland's favor. The jab really got on Sean Strickland's jab just really got on Abus. And then once the second round started, Sean Strickland started putting his right hand straight down the pipe behind the jab. And the way that Abus tries to turn to defend from shots, a lot of those shots were hitting Abus behind the ear. And then Abus just took the back foot and just kind of got, you know, effed up with his back along the cage, Um,
Is it unfair to question his preparedness? I mean, this was a 5-round fight, and he wasn't ready for a 1-round fight. Is that do you know what I'm saying? These are high level athletes. Is it unfair to watch that fight and question how prepared he was?
well, if you think about it, he had fought through the PFL, fought for the $1 million, got knocked out by Lewis Taylor. He's had a ton of success in his career. Um, but some dudes are just kind of front runners, where like when the going gets tough, they get going. I don't want to call Abus a front runner, but at the same time, like, I mean, you are not going to be able to front kick Sean Strickland out of a fight. Like I think he thought he was Alex Pereira. I think he thought he was just going to be able to go in there and do the same thing Alex Pereira did to Strickland. And like, that's just not going to happen to a guy like Sean Strickland.
No.
Like,
And
Alex Pereira's an enigma,
Strickland,
dude.
yeah, and
Like,
Strickland was going to be able to do that for 5 rounds, and he came into the fight knowing that and
yeah,
capable of it, and just incredible.
he, he, what he was able to do too, where he was lining up his right hand against the cage the second Abus had to start taking the back foot. Abus was also circling into Sean Strickland's power, which I never like. Um, and he was just raining down combinations on him. There was like a 7-punch combo that Sean Strickland threw, some looping shots around Abus's guard. And again, he just kind of like hit him with a waterfall of volume and made Abus quit. I wish he went to the body a little more, you know?
There, there was that sequence with about 2:04 left in the second round where I think it was like 2 4-punch combos or just an 8-punch combo with when Strickland really showed fast hands and really let some punches go. It was really smooth. It was like the beginning and the end, a
Yeah,
very
and
long beginning.
that fight was like over. That fight was over, like you said, dude. When there was like 2 minutes into that second round, that fight kind of looked already over. And the final blow where Abus was just like turned his whole body sideways and was walking with his left shoulder against the octagon. And Sean Strickland just nailed him with a shot right behind the ear. And that's what made him just fall over. But he wilted. Like it was just like leaving a fresh produce in the sun for too long. Eventually he just withered and withered and withered and withered, and then it was just he was done. Um,
It wasn't very competitive for a main event.
which is fine because this was, and we'll
It was
talk about the Fakhretdinov Kevin Lee fight here in a second, but this was, one of those where, hey, if Sean Strickland wins, he'll get maybe another main event, co-main event. Maybe he'll fight at the Apex again. Sean Strickland said he made a bunch of money for this fight. And then if Abus wins, they get this crazy Russian dude that has, if the UFC probably figured like, hey, let's test this guy out. We just signed him. We're not paying him a little bit of money. He's got over 30 pro fights. Let's just throw him in the fire and we'll throw him in the water and see if he can swim. And no, he drowned. Like that was just and that's going to be it for Abus. Um, like what's next for him, to me is we talked previous and you're like, he's going to fight a contender series guy. And I was like, yeah, they'll probably just line him up with someone like Joe Pfeiffer.
Yeah,
Dana
that's all you
loves Joe
can really
Pfeiffer,
do.
and the matchmakers like Joe Pfeiffer, maybe build off of Abus at this point. Because he's gonna be able to get low level people out of there, like dudes like Dustin Solswitz. Like he's gonna be able to get those guys out of there. But there's a lot more, you know, higher level guys that are durable, that hit hard, that can take your shots more than someone like Stolzfus. Um, but I have no idea what they would do with someone like Abu Snag. I just no clue, man.
At a minimum, he's got to show that he can go 3 rounds. I mean, not to state the obvious, but
Dude, totally. And he if that fight would have started a third round, like I don't even know what would have happened in between 2 and 3. He would have just came out for a third round and got one punch. Strickland, like you said, Strickland could have done Strickland's second round could have also been his 5th round. Like you saw him
absolutely.
hang tough with Cannonier in a fight I thought he won and go 5 rounds. And I mean, shout out to someone like Cannonier for having the ability to do that where he's at in his career. But Strickland's another one of those dudes. And I think for Strickland, like what's next for him? I mean, in the UFC alone, I put Israel at the top. I put Whitaker number 2. And then like tied for number 3, I'm putting Strickland over Vettori. And you don't want to use MMA math, but Cannonier bludgeoned Vettori, and Cannonier had a super close, highly contested fight with Strickland. Strickland's beat everyone else. They keep giving him contenders. He keeps, kicking the door closed on him. So, yeah, I'm putting him right on that third tier, right next to Cannonier. And depending on how the Duplessis Robert Whitaker fight goes, I think for Strickland, a title shot could be in his picture.
I'd like to see that. And we discussed the division as a whole, and there's not a lot of options.
No, and there's not going to be options for a hot minute. You got dudes like Ikram Alaskarov that's fighting Paulo Costa, but I don't even know if Paulo Costa is gonna that fight's gonna happen because Paulo Costa's weird as shit. Bo Nickel is like a dude that's coming up, but Bo Nickel's fighting Trayshawn Gore. Like Bo Nickel's not in a contenders fight for a year or two.
I don't think they're gonna super rush that either, or nor should they, because they have
No.
something potentially really special with him.
Mm-hmm.
But he needs some more experience.
Yeah, and as far as a press conference goes, Izzy's already beat Cannonier. And as far as a press conference goes, like I don't know if they're going to get a better soundbite out of any other contenders, but other than like Strickland and Izzy. Like, what's going to be a better soundbite?
I think you're spot on with that,
dude. You do a press conference. You do a press conference like a month out from that fight, and then just fucking I said it. There's my one curse word for the show. You just circulate. You just circulate those like little one-liners from Strickland, just making, dude, the last time they were at a press conference together, they weren't even fighting each other, and Israel was seething. He was so upset with Strickland. So I could only imagine, we'll talk about Kevin Lee in a little bit too, but I could see it looking like Chiesa and Kevin Lee from back in the day where Izzy just loses it because Strickland just gets him so upset. I think it'd be really funny too, quite frankly. Watching Strickland get so under Israel's skin so easily, so quickly. I mean, geez, imagine those dudes matched up, forced to fight each other. We're forced to listen to that press conference. Is 80% of the things Sean Strickland says unbearable? Pretty much. But if it's directed toward Izzy, watching Izzy get angry would just be so funny to me.
What about stylistically? Not to jump too far ahead, but what would you think of the fight?
Dude, stylistically, I think Israel should have every reason to win that fight. You know, just because Sean Strickland is hittable. You know, you know, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit more. Sean Strickland did defend a lot of shots from Abus. Circling back to the main event here, um, and I could see him doing something similar to Izzy, but not having as much success. He does a lot of hand fighting. Like Sean Strickland's got really
Right.
good parrying. Um, if you when I was tape studying for this, there was in the Brendan Allen fight, there was a moment where he marched Brendan Allen towards the cage. Brendan Allen was pillared against the cage, and Sean Strickland went and grabbed both of his wrists, parried both hands down, and threw a looping right around right around the guard. And he wasn't doing that to Abus, but he was doing a lot of hand fighting, a lot of swatting. Um, Sean Strickland has really good vision. He might have the best vision in that division, where you could tell he just spars all the time, where things don't bother him. Um, and he can still get hit with shots that he doesn't see. Again, Abus clipped him with two big leaping left hooks. Um, and I could see him having success against Izzy. Sean Strickland can also grapple. He's not a good wrestler, but he has good grappling. He showed that today. Um, I really like to watch people's demeanors when they're in grappling exchanges, especially if they're on the losing side of a grappling exchange. And like just like you said it, dude, like Sean Strickland was there was not one like sliver of panic on his face.
Not at all.
Like his
He
face
looked,
remained the same when he
yeah.
was finishing Abus, like the finishing sequence looked exactly the same facial wise as him losing, almost having his back to me. Like
Right.
he was just like, I don't care. Like this is not nothing I've never seen. Um, really good performance for Strickland. He won. He got a performance bonus too, 50 G's.
That's great. Deserved. Well deserved.
He is such a mother effort too. Like he pulled up the UFC, posted these pictures. You guys should go to the UFC's Twitter or Instagram. There's pictures of Sean Strickland like parking his in a white T-shirt with a carabiner with his like house keys on his belt buckle. Pulls up to the apex, parks his motorcycle right out front, goes in there, fights the main event, and then on Sean Strickland's Instagram story, like 35 minutes later, it's him just on the highway recording himself driving. Sean Strickland wears a helmet. So like he's not that much of an idiot. Like he wears a helmet on his motorcycle, but it's him just, selfie. He's still recording a video while he drives his motorcycle, but riding his motorcycle home to his apartment that has like a TV table thing and like a folding chair and one fork. Like he's wild, dude. Like he's becoming one of the characters of the UFC. So moving on to another fight that was actually pretty awesome in my opinion and a pretty big underdog win. We got Benoit Saint Denis beating Ismael Bonfim via rear naked choke / neck crank. And this is a pretty just number one egotistical, cocky performance from Ismael Bonfim, and then a smart, calculated performance from Benoit Saint Denis. They came out and they didn't touch gloves at all, and Bonfim threw a big overhand right, and Saint Denis cracked him with a body kick. And the reason why his body kick worked so well is because Saint Denis was throwing that left body kick out of the southpaw. Bonfim is orthodox fighter, so that body kick is open. You said before the first wrestling exchange, there was like 13 kicks that Saint Denis threw. And Ismael was like, it was just funny because he was calling him on and he was saying, yeah, you hit my arm, I'm blocking your kicks, you hit my arm. And then in the post fight, Saint Denis was saying like, hey, my point was to kick his arms because I knew he was going to block stuff. I want to kick his arms as much as possible and kill his arms because he's such a good boxer with great power. And Saint Denis hit him with like, I didn't count him. You said it was 13. I'm going to say 13. Hit him with like, at least 10 body kicks, some blocks, some not, but you could see the obvious welt that was like bleeding on the side of Bonfim. Bonfim was trying to counter the body kick with an overhand right, and someone as seasoned in MMA as him should know that if someone's body kicking you with the end of their kick, you're not going to be able to reach them with an overhand. Like, your legs are longer than your arms, and an overhand, however, it is a fast punch, it's not going to be as fast as a straight punch. So Bonfim was trying to counter a body kick with a big overhand, wasn't trying to catch it. If you can catch the kick and fire an overhand, but he wasn't even trying to do that. He buzzed Saint Denis a couple times in this fight. He hit him with the jump knee one time, hit him with some good punches. There was one good moment where Saint Denis made a really good read and got a nice duck under takedown where he kind of faked the body kick, drew the right hand out of Bonfim, and then used the duck under and hit him with a nice blast takedown and got into full mount. At that point, I thought it was almost even a wrap, but Bonfim was able to scramble out of that. Before I break down the fight anymore, what do you think about Bonfim's look and kind of ego, how he approached Saint Denis in this fight? I don't think he respects Saint Denis enough.
I think that's pretty fair. I don't think he did either, and I think Saint Denis. I think it was a combination of things because I think Saint Denis came out with a intensity, super intense, and with a game plan that he stuck to, and it was unofficially 13 kicks in the first 60 seconds and a takedown. So he came out of the gates blasting, and I think that was the game plan. You know, the kill his arms was the quote for the strategy in the post fight, and Bonfim did have some success though. To your point, like after the takedown when they're back on their feet, I think he might have even hurt Saint Denis.
He did
a couple times, a little bit, and that was where it was starting to get interesting. But Saint Denis he was a man on a mission. And one reason that I say that too, I think the names he called out after the fight of who he wants to fight next, I think he wanted to prove a point. So I think he had a setup for this whole thing where I'm sick of playing around.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, his previous fight was canceled, so he hasn't fought in a while. And I think he came out saying, I want to put, because the Bonfim brothers have gotten a lot of publicity, and the UFC is definitely, I wouldn't say showcase them, but, people have talked about them. And I think he wanted to use this fight as a statement, that being Saint Denis.
Yeah, and I think Bonfim also probably wanted to do the same thing. I think, 7 out of 10 times, I think Bonfim could probably just get his hands working with the proper respect and the proper game plan. Like, he was down blocking. He was able to, he buzzed Bonfim. He switched stance and threw like a big overhand left and kind of clipped Saint Denis in the back of the head almost and put him on skates. Saint Denis shot like a kind of desperation takedown in that moment. And I was like, oh shit, this is done. Even like the final grappling exchange did not come from a takedown. Bonfim defended a lot of those takedowns. His down blocking was great. His, downward elbows, defending the takedowns were great. Bonfim is a really good fighter. I think Saint Denis just fought a better fight tonight. He was also mixing up the body kick and then also going to the head, and they were getting blocked. But again, that was part of his game plan. And I think that the stances, the way that, they were just squared off with each other. Saint Denis being a southpaw and throwing that southpaw kick over and over again, just spamming it. It really reminded me of Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes, where the body damage was visible. And I know that, imagine someone's just hitting you with a baseball bat over and over again. Even if you block it, it's going to suck. And some of them are going to get through. When Bonfim was on his back in full mount, you could see a huge welt that was bleeding. And then the end of the fight was there was an entanglement against the cage, and Benoit Saint Denis ended up getting his back, getting Bonfim's back, and kind of tripped Bonfim up. And then he just sold out and went right for the back take and got in the body triangle, which was pretty dope. Like, he sold out, went for it, and got it. And another thing I noticed was Saint Denis looked big.
Yep.
He was definitely bigger than Bonfim. Bonfim was faster and more explosive, but Saint Denis looked bigger.
he finished that fight with, was it 13 seconds left?
There's yeah.
And was that a crank? Because I didn't see him under the chin, and I watched it a couple times, but you never know when unless you're.
I mean,
in the position.
Yeah, no, it was a neck crank. I'm gonna call it a neck crank because the choke wasn't in. But right. I mean, he must have a hell of a squeeze. And another thing that was surprising, that surprised me by Bonfim was like he showed that he could hurt Saint Denis. Bonfim is a violent dude, like, and he is good. This is actually a really, really good win, man. Like, this is, he was a big underdog, and this is a great win by Saint Denis. But look at Saint Denis' fight with Alexandre dos Santos, where he took an absolute freaking beating. That was his debut to the UFC, up a weight class. And Alexandre dos Santos can be violent, and he was definitely more violent at that time than he is now. You're not going to be like, Saint Denis is not going to quit on himself.
No.
He's not going to show up like Magomedov. Like, Saint Denis is like, he's not going to show up to a fight. He's not going to gas out. He's not going to wilt. You have to kill him to break him. And
it comes from a special forces career.
Yeah.
So that's ingrained in him.
He's literally built different. And I think, and I think someone like him, it's weird because like he wants to grapple, but he's also like a blood and guts dude,
Right.
Which is just dope. Like, he's a blood and guts guy, but he's also a guy that wants to grapple. And I think he's big for the division. Like you said, he called out dudes way at the top of the division. He called out Gamrot. Not going to happen, but I respect it. That's your moment on the mic, dude. Call your freaking shot. He said that he wanted a big name. I think someone that's a stepping stone between there would be someone like Joel Alvarez. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great pick. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Joel Alvarez crushed someone like Moicano.
Does Alvarez have a fight lined up?
I don't believe so. That's kind of why I went with him. I was also thinking maybe Drew Dober.
Coming off a loss.
Yep. And Saint Denis, he had some fights booked, but he hadn't fought in like 10 months. And he just needs to get more active. He's not very young, but he's not very old either. And with his game, he's going to make a fun fight with everybody. All of his fights are good fights. All of his fights are fun fights. Big shout out to Saint Denis. And Bonfim will be back. Vegas is just going to have such a hard time making betting odds for that guy, to go out there and be an underdog and go out there and beat a guy that was highly touted and a fan favorite like Terrence McKinney, and then, then become a big favorite and get matched up with Saint Denis and then lose the way he did. And he kind of fought like an asshole. It's going to be interesting.
And it's early in his career in the UFC.
Yeah.
And let's see how this loss ages too. If Saint Denis goes on a bit of a run, these guys, may find themselves, in the, as ranked fighters.
Yeah, or it could just be a one-off.
Right.
Dude, there's tons of great MMA fighters that just have one-offs, and sometimes they get them back, sometimes they don't. But like Stipe Miocic got knocked out by Stefan Struve.
Right.
It's just. Again, that's at heavyweight, but still, it's just MMA, dude. It's so freaking volatile. Anything can happen. And if you don't show up 100% and have all your, ducks in a row, you're going to lose. And that's why Bonfim lost his fight. I really, really do think, though, and if anyone that's a fighter that listens to this and you don't know this already, you just have to respect your opponents. Like, this is the UFC. And no matter who you think you are, like, you need to expect that your opponent's going to show up and be the best that he can be. And I really do think Bonfim didn't respect Saint Denis, and I think that's what kind of failed him here. Moving on to the final fight. Speaking of people that failed, Rinat Fakhretdinov just kills Kevin Lee. And this was a quick... I mean, dude, this fight, we both picked, you were on we both picked the Sean Strickland fight, right? We both picked this one, right? The one that we got wrong was the Demirous Magulov fight. We're not here to talk about that because we don't talk about our losses. But we were right about this one, but it did not go the way I thought it was going to go. I thought Kevin Lee would probably have a pretty good first round and then do what he does and probably lose 2 rounds and then lose the 3rd round worse than he lost the 2nd round. But Fakhretdinov, man, he looked really good. And I don't know if Kevin Lee is just done or Fakhretdinov looked really good or if it's a mixture of both. But Fakhretdinov's jab, he fired 2 overhand rights. The first one buzzed Kevin Lee in a weird exchange where Kevin Lee tried to counter back with 2 hooks. And Fakhretdinov is such a Russian striker where, he sometimes it looks great and sometimes it looks weird. Like his defensive stuff is like kind of flinchy and weird because he doesn't have like a very like if you look at American boxing, they have way slicker defense.
Yeah.
He doesn't have super slick defense. He's kind of just ducking and moving his head weird, but he buzzed Kevin Lee with an overhand, kind of in the first exchange where he decided to throw it. And then he threw it straight. He went from the overhand and they switched it to a straight 1-2. Fakhretdinov's jab looked so good. It was a jousting jab that was making Kevin Lee reset over and over again. And then that straight right down the pipe. All the commentary thought the fight was over. Kevin Lee goes for a desperation, extremely low legs, like lower than the knees, double leg takedown. And that front headlock game, that front guillotine, just a power guillotine. Did you hear someone in the crowd scream, "He's out, he's out"? And that's what triggered Herb Dean to go and check him. But Fakhretdinov had that front headlock and he was sunken down and Kevin Lee's arms were trapped behind his knees. So Kevin Lee's arms were stuck.
Right.
Like, that was so bad, dude. Like, I don't want to laugh about it, but I'm glad
that it wasn't worse because when he got up, he just melted.
Dude,
he was out cold. Who knows how long he was out?
Dude, it was like the Lyoto Machida fucking Jesus, John Jones. Like, we're just in a you ever go into someone that hunts house and they have those rugs of like the bears where they're just like laid out, like a taxidermy just laid out complete. That's what Kevin Lee looked like. He looked like a rug. He was just done.
I kind of knew that Fakhretdinov, I knew that he had it. First, I didn't think that he had it because remember before he sat down on it, he sunk it in and it was kind of high, and then he sat down on it. And I was thinking to myself, like, he must have it because he's going after it so hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then I think Herb Dean went to check Kevin Lee's arms, but they were
stuck,
trapped. It was a bad situation. Even to make light of it, but it was a club and sub, essentially.
A beautiful club and sub. I'm here for club and subs. I love club and sub. I love the ability to identify and switch. Fakhretdinov is, I think this makes him 21-1. So 21 wins, 1 loss. Loss is, old flash in the pan. One of those kind of shit happens losses. And he's now gone from the likes of, Brian Battle winning a 3-round decision, but he hurt Battle in that fight to now just punching through Kevin Lee.
So he came out pressuring, and we're talking about his punches, but he also had a lot of kicks. He was mixing it up for sure, coming out. And I think, we would, just because of his style, think that he was setting up the takedown, right? But I think he was having so much success. Obviously, he dropped him. And that was a 1-2, and he caught him with the 2 on that, right? And he dropped him. That
is beautiful, too.
Yeah, it was.
You know what I noticed, too, is why I didn't think he was going to be trying to set up that wrestling is, if you go back and watch the fight, anyone that watched this fight, I watched it just right again before we started recording, and Fakhretdinov was really planted. He wasn't bouncy. Usually people that are going to mix in the takedown, they're going to be bouncy. That way they can throw a strike and hide their takedown right behind it. But Fakhretdinov was very planted. His feet were planted.
That's a great observation. It's a great observation.
When you see someone with their feet planted, like, and they're walking forward, feet planted, like, they're there to try to throw, like, and he stated in the post fight that he habitually watched that Gregor Gillespie fight, and he said he watched it up until that morning. Like, he had studied Kevin Lee, and just great game put together by Fakhretdinov and their team. His jab was great. His leg kicks looked great. His power looked good. I love that he was able to buzz Kevin Lee with an overhand, but realized that his overhand was not fast enough to where Kevin Lee could read and throw, a couple hooks behind it. But the second that Kevin Lee kind of took that angle, Fakhretdinov threw the jab, and then the straight right was just, I mean, he hit him with the end of the punch, and he punched straight through him, and it just jarred him. Flash knockdown, and man, the way that he sunk in on that front headlock, just that power guillotine, was all of his weight downward, plus Kevin Lee's force going against it. And poor Kevin Lee, man, you don't ever want to see someone be choked that long. Like, the whole, like, New York subway thing where that dude was choked for way longer, but like, being in a guillotine like that and kind of having your head squeezed and being out, any longer can cause some serious damage, especially getting knocked out right before it happens. Club and subs have got to be scary,
Absolutely, yeah.
just to get flash knocked out, and then all of a sudden your head's getting squeezed off, you get knocked down, you wake back up, and you get knocked out again. And come on, Herb Dean, like, what are you doing? Someone in the crowd. That's why I was laughing, because someone in the crowd had to say, he's out, before Herb Dean reacted. And, like, that's in the business.
It's a position of immense responsibility, Herb Dean,
Yeah, man. Like, come on, Herb. You got to just, and it was tough. His arms are trapped, and you don't know,
To his defense, it was not a typical, usually you have an arm to pick up or to touch or anything, but he was trapped.
Dude, this one was so weird. Like,
but the performance, I mean, it definitely was a standout performance.
Yeah, standout performance for Rinat Fakhretdinov. And this was another one of those matchmaking things where we kind of talked about it earlier, where Kevin Lee gets a win, and Kevin Lee's back in the UFC. He's got a win against a guy that's 21-1 or 20-1 at the time. Big name, a Russian killer, and this shoots Kevin Lee back up into the rankings. The problem with Kevin Lee is, if you look at his record, he hasn't beat anyone. His last win was against Diego Sanchez in Eagle FC a couple years ago, and then he's never really had success at welterweight, and they keep throwing him big bones. Like, he fought RDA at welterweight, he fought D-Rod, and then now they're making him fight Rinat Fakhretdinov. Like, he either doesn't fight again, or needs a really big step back, or maybe he needs to try to figure out lightweight. But this performance doesn't give me any hope in Kevin Lee's future in the UFC. I could see them using him as a building block now. We're talking about Bonfim's, the other Bonfim brother, the younger one, Gabriel, I believe his name is. I could see the UFC trying to match Kevin Lee up with someone like Gabriel Bonfim, and maybe use him as a stepping stone for Rinat Fakhretdinov. I think they need to give him a jump up in the rankings. I think he deserves it. He's got one loss on his record. Give him the leech. The leech is coming off of a spinal injury, but he says he's going to be fighting again. The leech is probably going to be, like, he's 35 now, probably be 36 by the time he returns. The leech is going to be on the way out. Leech kind of has a semi name. He's kind of a Chinese UFC OG. I think Rinat Fakhretdinov versus the leech would be a good test for Fakhretdinov. And just another step up in the rankings. Shoot this guy up. He's in his 30s. He's, now's the time for Fakhretdinov.
I think that's a good one. I think it depends on how the UFC wants to handle him, right? And I've got a couple names if you're interested.
Totally, please.
I think just as the leech is a big name, Michael Chiesa and Kevin Holland are fighting in next week, I believe, right? They're on the card coming up.
Yep.
I'd like to see Fakhretdinov against the loser of that. both are fringe rankings, kisses in the back of the top 15. Holland's a name. He's fought a lot of people. I think that would be a good test. Either one of them would be a good test for Fakhretdinov and be a name as well.
Totally.
For promotion purposes. And if they really wanted to fast track him and give him a shot at breaking into the rankings, Magny just fought. He just shut down Rowe, and he needs an opponent. He doesn't have anything lined up right now. Again, that would be more of like the fast track for Fakhretdinov, but the guy's a vet. It
Totally.
just depends on how the promotion wants to handle him.
He looks like, I don't think he's going to have an injury coming off this fight at all. He's not going to have any sort of medical suspension. He could probably, if there was a fight available for him at 185, he could probably do it in a week. You know what I mean? So I think hopefully they can just get him match made soon. I don't think Neil Magny's injured coming off the Phil Rowe fight that he just skated by on. I like that for him too, because Magny's a big test. Magny doesn't really deny people. And with a very highly contested win that he just had, you don't want to match make it like it's a loss because it's Neil Magny, and Neil Magny deserves to be respected. However, now's the time for Fakhretdinov, and Magny's not going to be a title challenger.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted, that would be more the fast track, because he is coming off of a win, but in essence, he is into like a gatekeeper role. But there's nothing wrong with that. It'd be a great test, and Magny's great at that.
Yeah. I agree with it. I like it. I might almost like it more than the Lee fight, and I think it's probably more possible with where they are and Lee's, back injury stuff. Either way, it seems like we both want him to fight an old dog that is on the outskirts of the, within, 10 to 20 in the rankings there. Maybe if we can get him shot into the top 15, that'd be great. I'm sure he'd like that too, man. So that's going to wrap up the first segment of the show. I appreciate you so much for hopping on, bro. Please stay tuned for the next segment, and have a great day, guys. All right, everyone, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and kick off the second segment of the show called What's Hot. Real quick, one more time, thank you again to Greg for joining me for my first segment of the show. And what I would like to discuss today on What's Hot is kind of the title picture and the future of the middleweight division. This weekend coming up, UFC 290, we have Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. And it seems to be kind of a title eliminator, but we have Sean Strickland also coming off of a really impressive performance, even though over an unranked guy. Abus seemed to be highly touted by at least the UFC matchmakers. And we're kind of stuck in a pickle with Alex Pereira leaving the division, and all of the contenders kind of already losing to Israel. We have Robert Whittaker, 2 losses to Israel. First time he got violently finished in the second round, and arguably that fight could have been stopped in the first round. And then in their second fight, a lot closer of a fight. Some people scored it for Robert. Kind of a boring fight, in my opinion, but either way, a win from Israel Adesanya defending his title and beating Robert Whittaker for a second time. And then now that kind of leaves us with a potential rematch for Jared Cannonier, or if du Plessis can kind of pull the rabbit out of the hat and beat Robert Whittaker, he may be primed for a title shot here. The only issue is a guy like Robert Whittaker is, outside of the champion, is probably the worst fight for someone like Dricus du Plessis. And I'm not going to be covering that fight. I did not decide to handicap and pick that fight. But just so you guys are aware, Dricus du Plessis is more than 3-1 underdog. Robert Whittaker is more than a 4-1 favorite to win that fight. And the reason why I'm not picking it is because I see it as a super one-sided fight in favor of Robert Whittaker, which really leaves us in a pickle. The only thing that we have to kind of look at is both of these other title challengers, being Jared Cannonier and Sean Strickland, are both coming off of really impressive performances. The weekend before last, Jared Cannonier, had a bad first round against Marvin Vettori, came back and absolutely, beat his head in like a drum. And then Sean Strickland came and kind of just washed Abus this past weekend. So those are two guys that I'm thinking that could be in the title picture moving forward. Alex Pereira's gone to 205. Quite frankly, Izzy seems like a guy that probably won't fight at 205 ever again, in my opinion. Maybe, but the adversities that he faced, plus his body type, he weighed in for that fight at light heavyweight, like at 196 pounds. I don't know if he fully respected Jan Blachowicz' abilities. And still to this day, Jan Blachowicz has probably been the only guy to really fully out kickbox Israel, not to mention he was able to, even more soundly out wrestle him. That's besides the point. I'm just not too sure what the UFC is doing with this Duplessis and Whitaker match coming up this weekend on UFC 290. I'm really confused by it. I do have Robert Whitaker winning a fight like that. And then again, that just kind of leaves us in a weird spot. I think personally, kind of talked about this in the first segment, but Sean Strickland is the only fresh matchup. I do feel like the UFC could do a lot with Duplessis and just selling the fight to us. Really, they could do a ton with that. Duplessis already done his whole thing. I'm not in favor of what he's doing to sell a fight with Israel, but he's done the whole thing where I'm the real African champ. I'm gonna be the first real African champion. Blah blah blah. Sean Strickland had Israel seething, and they're in a press conference they were in together, and they weren't even matched up to fight. So just imagine if those dudes are matched up to fight. Quite frankly, there could be, if Duplessis wins, they're not going to do this, but something like Duplessis versus Sean Strickland in a title eliminator would probably make a lot of sense. But again, anyone that beats Robert Whitaker at middleweight pretty much deserves a title shot, in my opinion. Marvin Vettori, the way he lost to Jared Cannonier, he's kind of out of the title picture, in my opinion, unless he gets a couple more wins together. Just kind of leaves us in a weird spot. Middleweight is one of those divisions too that's not very full of talent, I'll just say, for lack of better terms. And we got guys like Hamzat Chimaev that can come in and get shot up the rankings right away. Ikram Aliskirov is fighting Paulo Costa, so that's another dude that you guys might want to keep your eye on in this middleweight picture. But right now, man, middleweight, with Israel reclaiming the title, Alex leaving, middleweight just seems to kind of be stuck in the mud. Guys, if you guys or girls, anyone listening to this, please comment below or shoot me a DM and let me know what you guys think the UFC should do with this middleweight title picture. Should they wait, to see how this weekend's UFC 290 plays out? I think that they should probably do that. Totally in favor if Dricus du Plessis again can figure out some way to pull the rabbit out of the hat. But these odds, him being at like plus 310, I think it should be even wider for Robert Whitaker. As we move on to the next segment, I'll go over some more betting odds with those other fights. But I mean, the skill gap between Dricus du Plessis and Robert Whitaker is leaps and bounds. And unless Robert Whitaker really slips on a banana peel or gets old overnight, he should just school du Plessis. And that's just going to put the UFC in such a weird spot. Kind of pulling for Robert Whitaker because I also do think a fight between Israel and Sean Strickland would just be more entertaining for the buildup. But guys, please totally reach out to me and tell me what you think. Comment below if you're watching on YouTube. Tell me what you think the UFC should do with the middleweight division. Just an interesting thought there. And then I do want to kind of talk a little bit more about the Ultimate Fighter, and I know that you guys are all seeing the Ultimate Fighter stuff being leaked all over social media. After this will come out on Tuesday, the 4th of July. Happy 4th of July, everyone. If you're an American, happy 4th of July. If not, shout out to you either way. But there's been a leak, and I'm wondering who's leaking all of these fight footage. It shows the precursor to Connor and Chandler kind of getting into a little bit of a scrap in the octagon where he calls Chandler a Bellator tick. I thought that was a little bit funny. It's also been funny to watch Connor pace around the apex in his very tight 3-piece suit, sweating bullets, watching his fighters kind of just lose, telling them they're doing a good job. But these leaked videos, I'm wondering where these leaks are coming from. We all know that Hollabot does submit and beat Connor's protege, and Connor would be now 0-6 in the Ultimate Fighter. And I just think it's going to be interesting to see if he even fights Michael Chandler. There seems to be, a scruffle between them both, and I'm more interested in just finding out where these leaks come from. Super interesting. Those are the two most things that I've been seeing cycle on social media the past week, and I wanted to just chat with you guys about it. If you know where the leaks are coming from, let me know, because I'm curious. Obviously, all this is pre-recorded and based off of some of the footage that I've seen. I think that a couple of these fights are actually happening. 2 or 3 fights are happening in one night. I could be totally wrong, but I think 2 or 3 of these fights are actually happening in one night. And the way that the show is put together, they're just kind of stringing it on, one fight per episode, fights at the end. If you're not watching The Ultimate Fighter, I'm not really watching it. I just fast forward to the fight at the end. I'll watch the weigh-ins and then I watch the fight at the end. That's how I do it. It's kind of how I advise you do it, unless you just like the reality TV shit. Either way, it's been entertaining. I love watching these UFC vets just kind of beat up these prospects. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the third segment of the show. This is called In With the New, and I would like to talk about some of these UFC 290 fights. International Fight Week, headlined by Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. Really good fights. The 3 fights that I have selected are Turner versus Hooker, Moreno versus Pantoja, and then obviously the main event. We're going to go ahead and start with Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker. We have Turner coming in at a -250 favorite, and then Hooker coming back at a +200 underdog. And both of these guys, man, especially Dan Hooker, he has been around for a long time in the UFC. Don't know how this dude ever made featherweight. And what a career he's had, Dan Hooker, quite frankly. Yeah, he's had some losses, and those losses have been tough. But he's also had some really good wins. That his last fight, that win over Claudio Puelles, that was a fight where Claudio kind of lost that one for himself, unfortunately, it seemed like. But prior to that, his loss to Arnold Allen, his attempt to go down to 145 was bad. He took a lot of damage in that fight. Dan Hooker is already a guy that's kind of foot slow, and the shellacking that he took from Arnold Allen was bad. He did buzz Arnold Allen in an exchange. They were going back and forth, and he buzzed Arnold Allen, but he just could not keep up with. He could not keep up with what Arnold was giving back to him. Before that, his loss to Islam Makhachev. That Kimura that was kind of where Khabib was coaching him through the submission. That was really awesome. That's Islam Makhachev. The dude is like ranked number 2 pound for pound or number 3 in the world. And the only 2 dudes that are next to him are Volkanovski and John Jones. We'll talk about Volk later. Beat Nasrat Haqparast. That was a good win. Before the Nasrat fight, he got knocked out by Chandler. And then prior to that, was that really brutal fight with Dustin Poirier. And we're coming up just over 3 years ago when that fight happened. That fight happened June 27th of 2020. As far as Jalin Turner, he's coming off a really close split decision with Mateusz Gamrot. Gamrot's really good. Before that, kind of club and sub Brad Riddell, knocked out Jamie Malarkey. He looked great against Eurosmedic. That is where he turned the leaf grappling-wise. I believe he won that fight via submission, rear naked choke. Rear naked choked Brock Weaver, but Brock Weaver was up a division. And this kid's came a long way. I feel like Dana White calling him a kid, but if this guy's came a long way since his debut to Vicente Luque. Poor Dan Hooker, even though he's a 6'1" light heavyweight, and he's a lightweight. He's a big lightweight, but they're just going to make him fight all the really big lightweights. Jalin Turner, 6'3", huge wingspan. He's kind of like a miniature version of John Jones. And his nickname is the Tarantula. Makes sense. Jalin Turner, I'm going to start off with what he's good at. I think probably his most slept on skill set within his striking are his teep kicks and his front kicks. I love how he keeps his opponents at range with that. He'll pressure you against the cage with teep kicks and body kicks. His teep kicks are so deadly and so powerful, and he's got such long limbs, especially his legs. The dude is like 75% legs. And he loves to push his opponents up against the cage with teeps, and then he'll like to line up his really straight, long punches, straight shots down the middle. He'll get people hurt, and then he'll choke them out. Also, this dude is he just going to fight every Australian within his weight class? And he's going to be called the Aussie Killer before we know it. If he wins this weekend, his new nickname has got to be the Aussie Killer. His submission win over Brad Riddell for me was really impressive. And Brad Riddell was Volkanovski's striking coach. Like, the dude is high level, comes from a good camp. And I could just see him taking advantage of Dan Hooker's abilities. What Dan Hooker does well, Dan Hooker, as shown in the Dustin Poirier fight, he's really tough. However, look at his fight with Edson Barboza too. What Hooker showed in his fight with Dustin Poirier is just so tough. But that fight seems to have taken a lot out of him. He definitely has not looked the same since that Dustin Poirier fight, in my opinion. The beating he took from Edson Barboza was bad too. Barboza crushed him with body shots. But again, what Dan Hooker does good is, I think his wrestling is very kind of slept on. He's gotten takedowns against almost everyone. He didn't want to go to the ground with Claudio Puelles, but Claudio Puelles was, desperation grappling kind of from the start. I'm going to remove that fight because I don't think that you can even tape study a fight like that and use that to make a pick on this fight. They're just, him and Jalin Turner are just so different. But Hooker's wrestling, man, he's got good takedowns from inside the clinch. He's got good elbows, but I think what's slept on is his blast double. He's got a really good blast double. If he wants to win against Jalin Turner, he's going to need to take this dude down, and he's going to need to do it a lot. He's going to need to hold position. The way that MMA is scored today, fights are based off damage. And Dan Hooker, he's just foot slow for a guy that's in this division. He's always seemed a little bit foot slow. When he went down to 145, Arnold Allen really exposed that. A guy like Jalin Turner's huge. He's long and lanky. But he cracks. He's one of those dudes that's just long and powerful. What I think is going to happen in this fight, I think Jalin Turner is going to put that body kick on Hooker. I think he's going to watch that Edson Barboza fight and really try to expose Hooker's body. Really, really just teep kick him to the body, try to push Hooker up against the cage. And I think he's probably just going to hit him with a straight shot and hurt him, maybe knock him out. Probably knock him out in the first or second round. I could see Hooker having a little bit of success with his grappling, but I just don't think, as good of a striker as Hooker is, he's got great knees up the middle, stuff like that. How are you going to knee a guy that's 6'3" up the middle? Jalin Turner's not going to be going for takedowns, so there's not going to be anything for him to time that off of. And what worries me for Hooker, if his game plan is to wrestle, is, even though he lost that fight via split decision, Jalin Turner was able to, scramble and resist some of the wrestling from Mateusz Gamrot. Gamrot's a better wrestler than Dan Hooker. Kind of all over Jalin Turner here. Feel bad for Hooker because if you look up, go to Sherdog.com and just look at this dude's record. He's fought everybody. He's been in blood and guts wars. Paul Felder, Edson Barboza, the list goes on and on. Dustin Poirier, the dude's fought everyone. But it's maybe it for someone like him, especially, at this level. do kind of feel bad for Hooker too, man. Again, this is just a really tough fight for someone like him. Just such a clean, powerful, straight puncher as Turner. I'm all over Turner here. Minus 250 is a little heavy. If you like Turner in this fight, maybe try to find him via finish, or the under, maybe bet the under 1.5 if that's available, if you can find it somewhere. This isn't a betting podcast, but that's kind of where I would lean. Moving on to probably my favorite fight on the card. You guys, if you're going to watch any fight this weekend, however you figure out how to watch your fights, buy the pay-per-view, whatever the heck you do, you need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row and you're seated down to watch the flyweight title fight, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. Moreno is a 2-1 favorite here. He's a minus 200. Pantoja's coming in at about plus 166 is where I found him. That's like the best number I could find. That might change through the week. This is a banger. Both of these dudes, blood and guts guys. Moreno is, I mean, if Mexico wanted if the UFC wanted a Mexican UFC champion, like Moreno's that dude. His boxing is so crisp. His scrambling is great. He's so tough. He's so durable. Pantoja, all the same could be said for him. He's definitely more of a marauder. He's a crazy dude. His back take game might be the best in the UFC. That dude gets on your back. His ability to transition to the back and get a choke, whether it be a choke, neck crank, whatever it may be, he's freaking lights out. The dude is incredible. He's beaten Brandon Moreno twice. One was an exhibition bout in the Ultimate Fighter. That's the only time Brandon Moreno's ever been finished. He lost. He won via rear naked choke. That's how he wins. And then his other fight, he beat Brandon Moreno via decision. And that was years ago. Moreno has definitely made tons of strides since then. He has had a couple draws, but again, that fight was 5 years ago. That was in 2018. Since then, he's racked up wins. This is Brandon Moreno. He's racked up wins against Kai Kara-France, Jussier Formiga, TKO Brandon Royval, which Brandon Royval has a lot of similarities to a guy like Pantoja. Draw with Figgy, beat Figgy, lost to Figgy. He's coming off of two really impressive performances. His Kai Kara-France fight. Kai Kara-France has got really good boxing, really good striking. Him and Manal Kopp and Figueiredo are like three of the most dangerous dudes, striking in the division. And Brandon Moreno's beat both of them. That body kick just made Kai Kara-France crumble. And then how he was just able to see that this is my moment. I'm going to go in there and finish. Incredible. And then that TKO doctor stoppage that he got against Figueiredo was a big leaping hook, hit him with the corner of his knuckle straight in his eye. Effed up Figgy's eye. Figgy thought it was an eye poke. Wasn't an eye poke. He got clubbed. He was losing that whole fight anyway up until there. That was kind of a big level up moment, in my opinion, for Brandon Moreno. As far as Alexandre Pantoja, the Cannibal, kind of a fitting nickname for this dude too. He's just a freaking wild man. He hasn't fought since July 30th of 2022, where he got that neck crank submission against Alex Perez. Before that, rear naked choke against Brandon Royval. Before that, really impressive win, unanimous decision over Manal Kopp. It was a close fight. He has lost to Askar Askarov, beat Matt Schnell, knocked him out, did lose to Figueiredo. I think this is going to be fight of the night. Make sure you have everything together to watch this fight. Definitely want to catch the main event, but this is my fight. This is my fight of the night, guys. This is just an incredible fight. Interesting to see a guy that is a 2-1 favorite, even though he's lost both times. One thing to take into consideration is Brandon Moreno has made a lot of improvements. And he's clearly, if you put him in a head-to-head rivalry with somebody, he comes out on top. Look at his Figueiredo fight. He's come out on top. Draw, finish twice, and then lost one. He's lost twice to Alexandre Pantoja. He knows that he's lost. I think Brandon Moreno has definitely made the more leaps in his game compared to Pantoja. I think Pantoja is kind of a finished product. Um, Number one, he hasn't fought as often as I'd like to see him. He's 35 years old at flyweight, which like this is kind of it for Pantoja. Um, Pantoja will get into the pocket, rely on his chin, bite down on his mouthpiece, and really let his hammers fly. Um, and that's where he thrives there because he will rely on his chin. Brandon Moreno, he's definitely a slicker dude. Um, his boxing is really slick. I love his boxing. He keeps the high guard. He shoulder rolls. His kicking game has really improved. His body kicks are great. His leg kicks are great. His head kick is great. The kick he, again, looping back to Kai Kara France, the kick he hurt Kai Kara France with, chef's kiss, like beautiful shit. He knows where to target his opponents. That punch that he landed on Figueiredo in his last fight, right in the eye, he knows how to target. He knows how to give out damage. One worry for me is he has been hurt, but again, that's Davison Figueiredo. Look what Davison Figueiredo did to dudes like Joseph Benavidez. Davison Figueiredo beat cleanly Pantoja, um, but Pantoja's very dangerous. I could see him clipping Moreno and then jumping on his back. These dudes, the scrambling ability from these two guys is incredible. Talking about his striking, Brandon Moreno's grappling, again, chef's kiss. Like his ability to, he has a single leg takedown game. His single leg takedown game is great. His scrambling is great. But one of my favorite takedowns that he does is he'll get like double underhooks, cut an angle, and trip. And they're these like really quick trip takedowns where he's cutting an angle and he's already blasted on his opponents before they even have the ability to react. Um, his top game is good. I just think Brandon Moreno is a little bit better than Pantoja everywhere. The only place that he could get into trouble is if he were to get buzzed or put himself in a weird situation where he, gives his back against the cage and Pantoja is able to take the back. Um, I'm so confident in Moreno in a 5-round fight too. He is such a headstrong dude. He knows how to game plan. He's going to be doing a tape study. And again, I just think he's improving. Every fight we see this kid leveling up, leveling up, leveling up. Um, he's coming off of 2 finish wins against Kai Kara France and Davison Figueiredo. Um, and I just, I could see him finishing Pantoja. He could do that. He could finish him, 3 minutes into the 4th round. And I would still be confident if Brandon Moreno lost the first 2 rounds, won the 3rd round, and the start of the 4th round is coming. I'm confident Moreno can win round 4 and 5. Minus 200 is a little bit interesting because he has lost to him twice. But again, Moreno is battle tested. Pantoja, both of these dudes battle tested. Both of these dudes are war machines. Flyweight is such a good division. Pound for pound, flyweight is just, especially Moreno, he needs to be more highly regarded by the UFC. The UFC really needs to, show their praises for this guy. He is just so good. And in my position, I'm not supposed to have favorite fighters, but just watching this guy's story, him being cut from the UFC, brought back to the UFC, and then to go on this tear that he's on, it's just incredible. Very similar to Yair Rodriguez in the main event, the current interim champ. I'm picking Moreno in this fight. I think Moreno's got what it takes. He's the man. Pantoja is also the man, but I'm kind of all in on Moreno here. I think his jab is going to give him a lot of success. I think he's just going to be smart. I think he's going to use his fight IQ. I think he has higher fight IQ than Pantoja. And this is going to look like, 2 stray cats fighting in a dumpster behind the Cheesecake Factory. If they get into scrambles, it's just going to be a blast. Make sure you guys watch this one. All right, guys, here we go. It's time for the main event. Alexandre Volkanovski minus 400 versus Yair Rodriguez coming in at plus 300. We have both of these guys are coming off of impressive performances, even though Volkanovski did lose his fight to Islam Makhachev. That attempt to move up in weight to claim the lightweight belt was very different than Conor fighting someone like Eddie Alvarez, which is just a much favorable matchup. Islam Makhachev was just not an extremely favorable matchup for someone, for someone like Volk. And he went up there and he, kind of clearly lost the fight, in my opinion. Some people thought he won. You can go to MMA decisions and fight your fight over there, but he looked great against Islam. Fifth round, dropped them. Whether it was due to fatigue, whatever, dropped Islam, raining down ground and pound. Yair Rodriguez is coming off of a super impressive performance over Josh Emmett. Um, Unfortunately, Josh Emmett has since had a fight since then and kind of lost a very one-sided fight against Ilia Topuria. And I feel like Yair Rodriguez's win would mean more if that Josh Emmett fight didn't happen. Either way, still super fucking impressive. Um, the last time Alexander Volkanovski won a fight was July 2nd of 22. So just over a year. These dudes will be fighting on this Saturday. His fight over Max Holloway was, we all thought Max Holloway had probably lost a step. But since then, Max Holloway has come back and looked great against Arnold Allen. Prior to his Max Holloway fight, he beat the living shit out of Chan Sung Jung. I know it was kind of a short notice deal, but that Korean zombie fight was just bad. He was even asking him if he was okay during the fight. Volks fought everyone, man. Dicey moments against Ortega, but nonetheless, basically dominated that fight. Prior to that, split decision against Max Holloway. That one was very contested. I thought he lost that fight. Um, but either way, the fight before that, he beat Max Holloway. That one was clean, in my opinion. Beat Jose Aldo, beat Chad Mendez, and the list goes on. His Chad Mendez fight, he did get buzzed and dropped in that fight, came back, finished Chad Mendez. Jose Aldo fight, kind of just cleanly outworked Jose Aldo. Was Jose Aldo at the tail end of his career? Probably. Either way, still damn impressive. Yair Rodriguez, this dude is just a freaking anomaly. He is one of one. Such a strange dude. His fight with Josh Emmett was so impressive, melting him with body kicks. Um, got buzzed, got dropped, got hurt in that fight, but fight was still kind of one-way traffic. Josh Emmett took him down and got triangled. This dude at men's lightweight in the year of 2023 got a triangle off his back. That alone doesn't happen. Prior to that, he beat Ortega. It was via a TKO shoulder injury, but he was kind of beating the shit out of Ortega for the first 4 minutes and 11 seconds of that fight. Prior to that one, he lost against Max Holloway. Had a lot of success in that fight, though. The striking, I would say, was probably, if I were to give it a percentage, I would say Yair probably won 60% of the striking in that fight, and Max probably won 40. Maybe I'm being generous for Yair, but Max was able to, lean on his other skills, take him down, control him. It's also Max Holloway, one of the greatest featherweights of all time. So that, that is what it is. Prior to that, he was kind of MIA for a few years. He had those Jeremy Stevens issues where the fight ended via eye poke, where that was down in Mexico, where everybody was like throwing shit in the arena. He was cursing at Bisping, came back, beat Jeremy Stevens, and he's just seemed to, come to form. You have to talk about the Chan Sung Jung weird back elbow. He hit Max Holloway with that elbow too, by the way. But he has seemed to really, really um, hone his game into just this offensive anomaly of weird athletic kind of awesomeness. Um, Yair Rodriguez is a pleasure to watch. I could watch his fight with Josh Emmett 100 times in a row and love it the 100th time. He's just incredible. He's one of the best athletes on the roster, just point blank period, physical attributes. The dude can do things that I don't even know names for. He's like that. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in another life, he would be like an Olympic gymnast. Like he's that level of athlete, just insane athleticism. But he's not only an insane athlete, but he's definitely not like a nuts and bolts striker. The dude does everything crazy. Incredible kicking game, great striking with the hands. His kicking game is just otherworldly. The way he was able to slice Josh Emmett in half with body kicks, just incredible. He switches from the head, switches from the body to the legs. Um, he's got really fast hands and good power. Another thing that's not really talked about a lot is his durability. Yair Rodriguez is a super durable dude. When he went away and he disappeared for a while, he also had like those weird USADA issues. He was also cut from the UFC. That means something. Came back and lost to Max. The weird thing with Volk, but then that interim title fight with Josh Emmett that no one really kind of thought he deserved. He went out there and showed everyone he definitely deserved to be there. As for Volkanovski, it's Volkanovski. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you know damn well who the hell Volkanovski is. The dude's a maestro. The dude is just a technical savant. Everything he does is just really, really good. Um, Shorter guy, shorter stock guy, but he's got very high fight IQ. He has long arms, actually. He's got pretty long reach. I think it's like 74 inches, which is kind of big for someone that size. Definitely longer reach than Max Holloway, even though Max Holloway kind of towered over him. Um, he really excels in a kind of front foot striking game where he does a lot of hand fighting, a lot of feinting. His ability to switch stance and cut angles is par none. His leg kicks are just great. He's got a great kicker. That's how he kind of nullified Max Holloway in their previous bouts. Great leg kicks. And his boxing is just so tricky. He's also a good wrestler. If you've heard Joe Rogan, everyone's gonna say he's weighed 200 pounds, blah blah blah, whatever. He's also a really good athlete, really strong. But I think his number one skill set, like the thing he does best, is he's just really mentally there. Like he doesn't get broken down by these big moments. For example, Cowboy Cerrone would show up and kind of melt under pressure. Um, Volk thrives in this pressure. You know, he lost to Islam, but that was a huge fight. Their pound for pound rankings were, not only were belts on the table, but they were very concerned about their pound for pound, and Volk just never seemed to be bothered by that moment. Um, he does everything so well. He sets up his strikes with his jabs. He's really good at um he's really good at baiting shots out of people and countering their counters. His feinting game, he freezes people with his feints. His feints are so good. Again, his leg kicks are good. He has the ability to throw a leg kick, switch stance, feint, bait a shot out of you, and then throw a shot right over your shot. He's got fast hands, good reflexes. He's getting a little bit older, but again, he didn't start MMA until late in his life, and he's kind of another one of those anomaly one of one type dudes that has the ability to even in his mid 30s in a lower weight class just be an absolute killer. Um, where I see him having success in this fight is there were moments where, Max Holloway did have success. I saw a clip rolling around online the other day when I was doing my tape study. It also came back to me. But in the Yair Max Holloway fight, there was a moment where they both kind of traded jabs and then traded twos. So straight shots down the pipe behind the jab. And Yair pop threw a 1-2, stung Max. And then Max just kind of hung in the pocket and pop hit him back with another 1-2. Um, and they both kind of, Max is just so durable. Yair kind of seemed to get a little more buzz by it, even though Yair seemed to be the harder puncher. Max is just so durable. Um, Yair is also ungodly tough. He took a lot of damage from Max Holloway. Both of those dudes walked out of that fight like they were in an absolute car crash. But where I think Volk can have success is I think if he really mixes in his wrestling, he needs to figure out how to stifle Yair Rodriguez. Yair Rodriguez is so dangerous at kicking range and at mid range with his weird attacks, but he's also shown to be freaking super dangerous if you try to crash the pocket. Chen Sung Jung, with like 1 second left in the last round of their fight, Chen Sung Jung crashes the pocket. He gets hit with that weird inverted up elbow, buries him. He hurt Max Holloway with it. He's got good knees. He's got flying knees, a jump switch knee. And if Volkanovski can figure out how to just kind of take the wind out of Yair's sails, I think that's what he needs to do. I think he needs to freeze Yair with feints, bait those big attacks out of him, and then try to take him down and just really, really stifle him. If he can take him down, um, one thing to be mindful of is Yair is so dangerous off his back. The second he gets on his back, he's just throwing elbows like crazy, throwing up submissions. He will use submission attempts to escape from bottom. He will throw up arm bars and he will throw up triangles, the up kicks he hit Josh Emmett with, incredible. Um, he's just a whirling dervish of just, I mean, it's like the scene of that movie 300 where they shoot all the arrows at once. That's just kind of how Yair's offense is. It's just so much all at once, so fast, so deadly. Um, I really think Volkanovski needs to mix up his wrestling to have success in this fight. The more he mixes up the wrestling, the more he baits stuff out of Yair, maybe tries to freeze him with feints, get him a little bit tired, take the wind out of his sails. Then that's where he can open up with his striking. Volkanovski's got 5 round cardio for effing days. I think he's got 8 round cardio. The dude's a fucking machine. He's a killer. He's great. Yair Rodriguez, I don't know if he has that type of cardio. He did show against Max Holloway he can hang tough. Where Max Holloway had success in the pocket with Yair, a big part of that was Max Holloway really relying. Number one, he's crafty as shit. Number two, he really relied on his durability there. From the tape study that I've seen, Volkanovski is not as durable as Max Holloway. Volkanovski's been hurt by Chad Mendes, hurt by Ortega, hurt by Max Holloway. I might have said that already, and hurt by Islam. Dropped to his knee in multiple fights. Knees and head kicks are what has hurt Volk. Volk has a tendency of kind of leaning into kicks at times. Um, I think Yair Rodriguez could have a lot of success in this fight, but if he has this success, number one, it's going to happen fast and it's got to happen early within the first 2 rounds. Um, I think for Yair to win this fight, he needs to respect Volkanovski as an opponent, but also not respect. He needs to get his foot on the gas, go after, throw a bunch of volume at him, throw caution to the wind, do what he does best, get dynamic, get crazy, get athletic. He's one of the only dudes in the division that's going to be probably faster and more athletic than Volkanovski. Um, I could totally see him, body kick, body kick, body kick, and then just throwing like a jump switch kick. He throws this jumping scissor kick that is just, God. I mean, if you're one of those people that you think like wrestling is hugging or you think that grappling is lame, whatever, Yair Rodriguez should be your favorite fighter. And out of all of the underdogs that are big underdogs on this card, like Dricus Du Plessis versus Robert Whitaker has similar gambling odds to this, where I think the space, and skills and dangerousness between Du Plessis and Whitaker is miles apart compared to Volkanovski and Yair. I think Yair as a 3-1 underdog is kind of crazy, and that just goes to show you, number one, how highly respected and how good Volkanovski really truly is. Volkanovski is a maestro. He's incredible, but I'm gonna pick an upset, and I'm gonna pick an upset because I think that Volkanovski in his Islam Makhachev fight showed he can be hit and buzzed by a guy that might be a little bit slicker there. Um, Islam had a lot of success on the feet through the openings of those first 1 through 3 rounds against Volk. You can't let someone like Yair Rodriguez have that same success. You're gonna listen to this, y'all are gonna think I'm crazy. Um, I think Yair is gonna knock him out. I know it's a stretch. I know it's a long shot. Um, and what's the point of me doing this show to just pick favorites? I'm not gonna gamble on this fight. Um, so it's not going to cost me anything to pick a favorite. Only humility for me to come back and have to eat crow next Tuesday. Um, I just think Yair is going to be able to catch him with something. Um, Volkanovski's getting older. He's been buzzed in his fights. He's very durable, very tough, but he has been hurt. And I just think I just have a weird feeling. It's one of those things where, you know, mid 30s, super highly touted guy, been at the top of his game forever. Eventually, he's gonna have to fall. Um, and I think Yair is gonna be the one to do it. Incredible fight. Really, really good pay-per-view event. I was so super excited to come talk to you guys about this. There's so many great fights on this card too. I mean, hopefully you guys tune in from front to back. You got Robbie Lawler fighting Nico Price, and you got Bo Nickel fighting Trayshawn Gore. There's just so many great fights on this card, and just tune into it. It's going to be not. This is not one to miss. That's going to be the show. Wrapping it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, reach out to me. Dev Goes Fishing on all of the social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram. My direct messages are open. Shoot a comment here on YouTube if you're on YouTube. If you have any questions, anything to say, call me out. If I'm wrong on this, comment on this and tell me, hey, dude, you're wrong. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you so much again, and enjoy the fights, everyone.